Okay, who's that? Oh, you had one. I'll go with you. And then
I was just wondering, what led you into becoming a voice actor of all the options you had as a performing arts student?
Okay, so as a trained thespian, what led me to voice acting? I was super nerdy for cartoons my whole life. Anything animated, even if it was poorly animated. I just loved I'm a nerd. I loved fantasy. I loved, other realities, and there's no way to be a part of it because it doesn't exist. You can, do the former Star Trek experience, which is no longer there, I don't think. Right? They open it up again. Were they going to move it? I don't know.
Star Tours.
Star Tours.
There's a new one. Yeah.
I'm going to move it. Yeah, but I got to go to Quark's bar before it shut down. Have a Borg spear Borg spear, and there was the warp core breach. Anyway, this horribly sticky, cloyingly sweet drinks with dry ice in them. But I'd always wanted to, and then the weird thing was it was an opportunity. I mean, you don't always, in any career, get to totally decide what you want to do and do it. I mean, especially in the performing arts, a lot of people are trying to succeed as actors or dancers or sculptors, and with more or less success. When I heard there were auditions in Wilmington, North Carolina for Riding Bean, I was the only actor in town who knew what a riding bean was. They're like, is it a food? I was like, no, it's like a getaway driver. And anyway, he's this guy with a red car, and then he's not really a superhero, but he's almost bulletproof. There's a whole scene, it's weird. And then the grenades are on his car, and he hits the brake with his toe. And I was that crazy person. But when I heard about that, I made sure I was going to be in the auditions for whatever they did next, and that was Bubblegum Crisis. So really, for me, it was opportunity, and always wanted to be a part of that. I studied theater. I did theater before that. I did some TV before that, some film stuff. But I got really lucky because I was where it was happening, and they didn't know how to do it all in the beginning. They were all sort of inventing it as they went along. And I got to be part of the cattle call. So I was like number 257. And they were like, next. But before I left, I was like, look, by the way, I totally know what this is. I watched this anime. That's the Japanese word for animation. Thank you. And then I talked of Chuck Agresta, who was the head engineer at the studio. As I was leaving, I saw him sound designing, and he had a Korg Poly 800. And I just came back from Guitar Center, literally, from Guitar Center, grabbed my sandwich to go, and then came here for the press panel. But I've always been into audio technology, and I saw him using this keyboard, and I went, what are you doing there? He said, well, I'm shadows on it. And he was speaking like, who are you, actor? Get out of my laboratory. And I was like, but the Korg Poly 800 it's not multi-timbral, it's not velocity sensitive, right? Why would you not use a more modern keyboard? He goes, oh, well, I want to enter all the effects into one amplitude, and then I can go into the sequencer and change it later for the mix. I was like, oh, that makes sense. He goes, you know about MIDI? And I was like, yeah, I've been using MIDI since I was 13, and I've been networking my DX7 and whatever, MKS100. That was a weird Roland sampler, but it had a higher bit resolution than the Mirage. And he was like, we need some help. So then I sort of got in on the studio side and whatever. But yeah, opportunity. It was there, and I worked really hard to get in on an audition, and they picked me for two reasons. I knew what it was. I was a good actor, and then I could do the part of it. And you had to.
You keep saying that you're a nerd, and that the anime characters that you play are either the hero or the nerd. But was it difficult for you to adjust to Noitara from Bleach? Was it difficult to adjust from hero or nerd to total kick-ass dude?
Okay, was it hard to adjust from my usual staple of heroes and nerds to be Noitara? Yeah, I mean, it was great. I've not had a lot of experience. Well, you've been given a lot of opportunity to be bad guys. And, I mean, going in the conservatory, we all thought, oh, they're more fun. You let it out. It's quite cathartic. The hardest part of Noitara is that voice. It's so... And he's absolutely mental. Absolutely mental. Absolutely mental. I mean, he's not just bad. His justification for things. He just wants... He's like lawful chaos. I mean, he needs to he's got his own twisted sense of honor. I don't think it's even about honor. It's a celebration of chaos and destruction and being on top of it, affecting the world, perhaps. You know what I mean? Not by planting a tree. The kind of malice he has for people. It's not my world at all. And that said, I think we all have everything inside of us. I had one really wonderful Hungarian acting teacher in college who spoke of the basically collective unconscious, that if you're going to play a strung out heroin addict, you don't have to get on heroin. Don't do that whole. There's a Marathon Man story about Dustin Hoffman, and it is Dustin Hoffman, right? And Sir Laurence Olivier. And the short of it is, he's got the scene where he's got to be all strung out, so he keeps himself awake for 3 days and stops eating, and he's jogging to make himself more exhausted. And he shows up in the trailer, and Olivier's like, "What's happened to you, boy?" And he's like, "Oh, I've just been getting prepared for the shoot. Oh, I haven't slept in 3 days and haven't eaten. I feel like hell. Oh, it's going to be great." And he's like, "Try acting, my boy." But so her point was, you don't have to do heroin to play that, or be a drunk to play a drunk. That we can all tap into this thing. So anyway. So by way of saying I don't feel anything like Noitora, it's really interesting to go into these places that you don't ever do. I'm pretty polite. I don't ever celebrate blood all over my face and then lick my weapon. It's a sword thing. It's not a. Oh God. What have I said? Lick my weapon. Don't pull that out of context. So it's very, very different. But again, that's acting, and it is really fun to do something that you don't ordinarily do. A lot of voice actors I talk to. I won't speak for anyone else, but it's sometimes easier to do big, broad, not yourself things. When it's you, there's a lot of there's a lot of other variables. When it's something very not you, there's a lot more freedom. And that's what's beautiful about voice acting, is I can be what I'm not, even though I play a lot of nerds, which I am. I've contradicted myself. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
I had a question about the Venture Brothers, actually. Because of the schedule and doing a season, taking a year or two off doing a season, like that, there are a lot of running jokes in the series, a lot of callbacks. As the actors, do you remember all that kind of stuff, or are you sitting there just doing your scene and hoping that the directors and writers know what they're doing?
Okay, so in Venture Brothers, there's so many in-jokes and self-referential things that when we do subsequent seasons that we've had a year between, is it hard to remember. Well, a lot of that stuff, most of what I remember from the sessions is very different from what I'll retain watching the shows. If I don't watch the shows, I'll be lost. But when I watch the shows, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing happened. And then, and I get reminded of many of the minutiae details when I come to conventions. And people are like, this one time, Truculles, and I'm like, oh yeah, Truculles, that was a funny name. But a lot of those jokes are, what gets developed later in the show often starts off as just like a one-off reference to something because it's a funny name, and then they're like, we should bring something back, and then they'll dig through. And sometimes I won't remember every single thing because it was a throwaway line in the background. But yeah, and the people directing me, by the way, are Jackson Public and Doc Hammer. So they wrote everything, they know what's going on, and they'll set it up for me. But but for the most part, I remember it because I've watched the show. But then when I'm watching this show, I'm like, oh yeah, there was that time. And I can't wait to see it all built because the show was put together because oh my God. When Jefferson Twilight was introduced, I thought I had some of the funniest stuff ever. That whole day, I just was like, I was doing other work and I think I was working on like Gal Gaigar. And I couldn't stop thinking of, I hunt Blackulas. And I was like, no. Blade was a Blackula, but I hunt them. I don't know, whatever. It's like, I've got to hear this. And Charles Parnell, who plays the character, is an amazing man. He's a wonderful man, beautiful man, and he's Jefferson Twilight. I'm crazy. I got it. So I'm a crazy person. It was nice to talk to you all. I don't have time for another question, but I hope to see you guys later this weekend. Thank you, Chicago. Bye.